Over the past 20 years, I've done thousands of deals with real estate agents. So I've perfected the process of talking to, negotiating, and securing good deals with agents. And what I'm gonna do on this video is I'm gonna listen to my fast track student, Jeremy Raey, on 4 calls with agents, and then I'm gonna provide feedback and give him tips and suggestions on how he could do that better. So extremely valuable information. I hope you get a lot out of this. Be sure to take notes and really listen and learn how to get good at working with agents. Let's go.
Jeremy Raey, how are you doing today?
Good.
Hey, I was looking at a property that you had listed. I think I put an offer on it a while back on 4208 Reed.
Okay.
Are they motivated at all, or are they just kind of holding?
Not really.
Not
Yeah,
really.
he's not. I mean, there's a little wiggle room. He has a threshold he needs to be at. You know. So, but he's not desperate. I'm gonna put it that way.
Okay. Just following up, I just saw it still in the market. I remember I think I offered 80 for it.
Yeah, but I've had 125. I get two or three 125s a day.
Oh, nice.
You know.
I don't know if that's good or not.
Yeah, he's just not ready to take that kind of hit yet. So
Okay.
he needs to be somewhere. But
Okay, let me pause you right there, Jeremy. So when we're talking with agents, we're always trying to figure out when they tell us information, how is that information helpful or valuable? And if we don't know how it's helpful or valuable, then that triggers us to ask more questions. Okay, so here's the first thing that I noticed. In 49 seconds, you had mentioned that you had offered 80 previously, and the agent said, I get 2 or 3 offers a day for 125. I think that's what he said. Now, how's that helpful? Like, what does that tell us? You asked, hey, is there any motivation here or what's going on? So that's a great question. So when think about how you could phrase that. So you might say, hey, I called and made an offer. It was a cash offer. It was kind of low at the time. I see this property still for sale. So I'm just calling to see, what's going on here. Is the seller not ready to come down on price? And that's sort of what you did. So I think that's a great way to start. That's a great question. That's a reason why you would be calling an agent to ask that question. And the agent's like, yeah, no real desperation. I'm getting offers for 125. Okay, now whenever I hear an agent reveal what the market's doing, I'm all over that. Like, that's gold information. That's so valuable. Because here we are sitting on our computer, we're looking at a deal, we're running numbers, we're coming to a number, and we're like, okay, for this to be a deal for me to make money, I need to be at 80. Awesome. You came to some sort of an analysis to get to 80. But we never really know until we find out what the market's willing to pay. In fact, the only real way to know what the market will pay, the only honest way to know would be to contract it, try to dispo it, and talk to 20 cash buyers in the market and find out what the 20 cash buyers in the market are willing to pay. And when they come back and they tell you what they're willing to pay, well, now we actually know what the market will pay for that property. It's the only real way to do it. Now, we don't want to get in a habit of finding out what the market wants after we contract a property, because then we're going to be backing out of a lot of contracts. See how that could be a problem? Some people do that, by the way. I was on Wholesale Hotline with Brent Daniels last week or a couple of weeks ago, and he said that virtual wholesalers, the fallout rate on contracts is as high as 90% for a lot of virtual wholesalers. So what they're doing is and when I say virtual, meaning they're in any market, all markets, is they talk to a seller. They don't even know if it's a deal. They just lock it up and then they try to figure it out. Exactly what I just said. Lock it up. Who cares what the price is? Whatever the seller wants, lock it up. And then we'll go to dispo it and we'll find out if we can squeak out some money. And if we can't, we just exercise a contingency and back out. Horrible business model. I mean, that's why we're getting regulation and all the bad heat is things like that. I mean, it's just horrific because sellers are now, packing and moving and all these issues, right? It's inevitable sometimes to have to renegotiate. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying as a business model, to renegotiate every contract's a problem. So going back to this situation here. So when the agent says, yeah, I'm getting offers at 125, my first question is, okay, are those retail offers or are those cash offers? And he's divulging this information. He volunteered that information. So he says 125, I'm getting a lot of offers at 125. Well, then clearly the market's willing to pay 125. If that's true, like if he's being honest and that's true, and he's getting multiple offers around 125, then we've just established the market value of that property. It's 125. Now we want to clarify, is that retail or cash buyers? So I'll ask him, I'll say, hey, so let me get this straight. You're telling me that you're getting a lot of offers for 125, correct? Yes. Now, are those cash buyers or are those retail buyers? Those are cash buyers. Cash buyers are offering 125. Now, here's my next question. Why is the seller not taking that 125 offer? Why is he not taking those offers? And you're at 80, so you're way off, right? Well, why is he not taking 125? And then he'll probably say, well, he's listed for 149 and he did say right in the beginning, he's got a little wiggle room. So he's willing to come a little bit off a list price. And I don't know what his list price was, but he's probably holding out for a higher number than 125. So then I start to have this conversation with this agent. And what I want to do is I want to try to coach this agent to help the seller do a price reduction and come to reality. Maybe that'll go somewhere, maybe it won't, but that's what you're trying to accomplish. So I'll say to that agent, I'll say, well, what do you think about 125? Do you think that's a good offer? And the agent will say, man, I think that's what the market is. I think that's a fair offer. I think clearly that's what people are willing to pay. And so then I'll say, well, have you helped the seller see that? Like, are you showing the seller comps? So I'm trying to then help the agent and help me understand what's going on here. We don't know what's going on between agent and seller. So I'm just trying to get my head around what's going on here. And maybe there's nothing to do. Maybe the seller won't budge. He won't come down anymore. And it's just got to go back into your follow-up. But if I know the market's willing to pay 125, let's say that is a cash buyer number, like that's what the cash buyers are offering, then now I can readjust. So then I can go back and go, okay, well, I can actually pay more than 80. I could probably pay 100, knowing that I could wholesale it for 125, because now I know what the cash buyer market's willing to pay. And so that's really valuable feedback because it helps me understand where I'm off. And so I'll ask him, I'll say, okay, let's say that he says they're cash buyers. My next question will be, okay, well, what kind of cash buyers? So I'll say, are those cash buyers, do you think they're wanting to keep this as a rental, or do you think those cash buyers are looking at this as a flip? Because that makes a big difference. Are these flippers or are these buy and hold? Buy and hold investors pay a whole lot more because they're not going to do much to the property and then they're going to rent it. Flippers are the lowest paying buyers in the market because they have to do a big renovation and make a profit. Right. So then I'm just trying to get to the bottom of things by asking follow-up questions. Okay, let's jump back to your call.
Hey, do you have anything else? Any other fix and flip properties?
No, I usually try to pick them up myself. The numbers just didn't make sense for this one for me. So
yeah, Okay.
But,
awesome. Yeah, save my number if there's anything.
Okay, so let's hear what he said there. So he said, no, if it's a really good deal, I'll pick it up for myself. This one just doesn't work for the numbers. So then I'm like, oh, you're an investor too. So tell me about that. Are you mostly an agent or are you mostly an investor? If you're an investor, what types of properties are you looking for? Now he could be a cash buyer for you. Maybe you say, hey, if I find a deal, are you someone that I should talk to about it? Like, are you looking for deals? I work with a lot of other people and we often have deals, and maybe I could bring you a deal that fits. So now you're talking to him like he's a cash buyer. Now, a lot of agents say that exact thing, and it's a bunch of BS. Like, they're not actually buyers. Like, I'll have agents say all the time, well, if the seller was willing to sell it for that price, I would buy it. No, you wouldn't. You say that, but you wouldn't. You're an agent, not an investor, right? There's a reason why you're an agent and not an investor. So, but sometimes it is true. Sometimes and we're going to see that more and more true. We're going to see more and more agents also becoming investors because they have to adapt to the agent life now because of the new NAR guidelines. So now, like he said something else. So how is that information valuable? How do I use that information? He said, well, if it was a good deal, I would buy it. So rather than just move on and be like, okay, well, call me when you get something, use that to your advantage. Take that information and think about, okay, well, if he's also an investor, how can that be beneficial? I would say to him, when he said that, I would have said, oh, well, what would you think would be a good number on this property? I'm at 80. You're telling me you're getting offers at 125. You just said that you would buy properties if it was the right deal. What would you pay for this property? And he might be like, well, I'm kind of where you're at. I need to be at 80. Or he might be like, yeah, if it was at 100, that I would be very interested, or, I'm really not interested in that property because it's in a bad neighborhood and here's why, or whatever, like who knows what he'll say. But again, all of that information is allowing you to become a market expert. It's allowing you to see where you're off on your numbers. It's helping you fine tune where you're at. Oftentimes we think we're at a number and then we find out the market's actually way different than what we think. And so that's all helping you become better at what you're doing. If you feel like he's a legit buyer, you could certainly, add him to your cash buyer list. And then you might even have a wholesaler conversation with him. I might even say, hey, you know what? We actually wholesale a lot of properties. Do you work with wholesalers? And he might say, yeah, I buy some properties from wholesalers. And then you could say, okay, well, I'd love to put you on my cash buyer list. Tell me what you're looking for. Okay, let's finish up. We got another 5 seconds.
Anything else comes up, let me know.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Okay, so you said, if you come up with something, let me know. Something better, I think, Jeremy, is to say, hey, I'm going to put you down to follow up with you periodically. Are you okay if I call you or text you, once a week just to see if you've got anything coming up? Or I would even coach him a little further and say, what would be ideal is if you've got a distressed property from a seller, prior to listing it, give me a call. I'll give you my offer and maybe we can work something out before going on market. Like I'm trying to coach him along to what would be the perfect situation, which is he brings you off market properties. That's the best situation you could hope for. You might even say, hey, if you got a great deal that you think would go to a cash buyer, maybe we could JV, because he said he's an investor. So now you can have a little bit of a different conversation when they're investors, right? They'll be open to talk about wholesaling, JVing, buy box, stuff like that. I would also say, hey, can you save my number as Jeremy Cash Buyer? Because he might forget your name, but he might also be thinking, oh, I've got some cash buyers saved in my phone, and he'll do a search in his phone and he'll find your number. So I always tell agents to save me as, Jerry Cash Buyer. And I tell them, look, call me. When you get something, call me. I'm your guy. And are you okay if I follow up with you? That way, now he's expecting you to follow up with him, right? Now you're hoping he'll call you, but agents don't run their business like wholesalers. They're not good at organizing data. They're not good at following up. You would think they would be building a buyer list and they would call you when they get something, but for the most part, most don't until you create that relationship. So your goal is to stay front of mind. Front of mind is how you win with agents. If they get a deal and they're like, man, this is a cash buyer deal. Who should I call? Oh, Jeremy. He calls me every week looking for deals. I'm going to call Jeremy. Whereas if he doesn't remember you because nothing happened that's memorable, he's not going to know to call you.
Once he gave me what the market's paying, but then I asked questions about who's your buyer, if it's a retail buyer, if it's a cash buyer, and then probably ask more questions around, is it a buy and hold investor or is it a flip investor?
So he gave the information, but I'll ask it. I ask every agent to tell me the numbers. So it'll go like this. If they don't tell you the number, I'll say, it's been listed now for, 6 weeks. Have you gotten any offers? Are you getting much interest in the property? So I'll start out there. I'll start out really soft. I'll say, are you getting any interest? Yeah, we're getting offers. Okay. Well, tell me about it. What kind of offers are you getting? Well, we're getting offers for 125. 125. Wow. Are those retail or cash? Oh, they're cash. I come from it from a curious place. Like, wow, 125. I mean, that's way more than I'm at. I'm at 80. How are people willing to pay 125? Do you think those are buy and hold investors? You're trying to get to the bottom of it, right? You just keep asking questions to get to the bottom of it. Who's willing to pay 125 when I'm willing to pay 80? Either they're stupid or I'm stupid. Somebody's stupid here. I'm the one off, obviously, because the market's paying 125. Now, if it's retail, that's a whole nother story because it's clean enough to go retail. So I'm always wondering that too. Every time I go on market with an agent, before I go into the call, I'm thinking to myself, who is the target buyer for this property? It's on the market. Who are they looking for? And I'll even ask it. If it could go either way, I'll ask the agent, I'll say, who's your buyer for this? Are you looking for a retail buyer or are you looking for an investor? Oh, we're looking for a retail buyer. Okay, that's not me. I'm an investor. I would need to get it at a discount. If they're like, no, we're looking for a cash buyer. Okay, so you're looking for a cash buyer and you're getting offers for 125. Those must be buy and hold investors because I don't see how a flipper could buy it at 125. Is that how you're seeing it? Like, I'm just, you just keep asking questions like that. Does that make sense?
Yes. And the point you made about when he revealed that he would take it down, like he would buy it as an investor if it was at the right price. And so he didn't think 125 was
Clearly.
clearly.
But assume that when agents say that, there's a 50% chance that they're just saying that.
Right, because they benefit for the higher the price, right? They get their commission based on the price. So the more they can sell it for, the more they commissions get, right?
Yeah, but I mean, we're talking 125. He's going to make a couple grand. Like, the point is there are some agents that will list properties and they'll buy properties. They play both sides. I play both sides, but I'm mostly the investor side, but I'll list when I have to. And then sometimes it's the other way around. They mostly list, meaning their primary income is from being an agent, but then they're doing a deal on the side here and there. That's probably more like what he is if he's being honest. But again, agents say that as a way to refute low offers. So they'll say things like, if the seller would take 80, I would buy it. First of all, you can't, because you only can be one thing. You can either be the agent or you can be the investor, but you can't be both at the same time. You can be both, but not at the same time. Because when you're a listing agent, you represent the seller's best interest, and your job, your fiduciary duty, is to get the seller the highest price. If you're representing yourself as a buyer, as an investor, then you have no fiduciary duty to the seller, and your goal is to get the lowest price you possibly can. When agents say that, it's actually not true at all. They could lose their license if they're misrepresenting their role in the transaction. So play both sides, but be very clear about which side you are, and take the side and stick to the side.
Hello, this is Aaron.
Hey, Aaron, this is Jeremy Raey.
Hey, how are you doing?
Pretty good. I talked to you a while back about 24 Avenue Inn.
Yes,
Is that still available?
it is. Yep.
Okay.
It went under contract and they backed out of it.
Oh.
It's back to available.
Okay.
Okay, so Jeremy, don't move on. What did he just say?
It fell through, probably another wholesaler.
Went pending and fell through. So this is an opportunity to gather information, right? Like, what could you ask him about that?
Why it fell through, maybe?
So I would say, so it was under contract and then it fell through. Like, I always just repeat what they say for two things. It gives him another chance to give me more information. And I'm just being curious too. Like, so it fell through. What happened? What if he says, well, it was a retail buyer and they couldn't get their financing? Okay. What if he says, well, during their due diligence, they found out that it has a foundation issue? That's some pretty big information. What if he says, well, it was one of these freaking wholesalers and I hate wholesalers? Whatever he says could be valuable. And then I would be trying to find out what that price was. So let's say he says it was an investor and during his inspection, he backed out. Okay. Well, what price did he have it under contract for? Now, technically, they're not supposed to tell you that, but 9 times out of 10, they will. If they do, it's on them, not you. You're just asking questions. You're a buyer, right? So I'll ask questions. Oh, it fell through. Well, what price was it under contract for? Sometimes they'll say, well, I can't really disclose that. Other times he'll say, well, 125, and then it fell through. And then I'll be like, okay, well, what kind of buyer was that? Right. We're back to the same thing. Like, market is doing something. There's something happening on this property in the market, and I want to know what the market's doing. How do I learn what the market's doing? Nothing gives better feedback than activity in the market. That beats any other analysis you could possibly do. You could look at comps till you're blue in the face, but when there's offers and there's a trend of that, and there's data that they're giving you about what's happening, that's real-time information.
I'm trying to remember what the situation was. I know I sent you a proof of funds letter. I'm looking at my numbers. I think I'm still about 126 about there. So we're getting close.
Yeah. I know they're on the market right now. I think they just reduced it to 149.9.
Okay.
So, yeah, if you want to resubmit at that, or if you want to improve it a little bit, just let me know, or send me something via email and I can get it submitted straight away. So.
Okay. Could you send me your email address?
Okay. So at this point, what I would do is I would ask him some advice, because you're totally right, Jeremy. 125 on a 150 listing is not that far off. Like, that's not unheard of to get something done. So I would say to him, I'd say, look, what do you think would be best? Would it be best to call the seller and give him a verbal and say, hey, this investor that offered before, he's still interested. Here he is. He's still at 125. What do you think? Or do you think, Mr. Agent, that it would be better to put it in writing and put it in front of him? And the reason why I'm asking that question is because if the agent says that he's willing to put it in writing, then we go for that every time. Because a written offer is way more stronger than a verbal offer because the seller's looking at it now and it feels legit. When people give me verbals, I'm like, well, put it in writing, then I'll look at it. And that's just to see how serious they are. Are they willing to put it in writing? I don't ask agents to put it in writing because most of them are lazy and they don't want to spend the time if they don't feel like it's worth the time. So most of the time they don't feel like it's worth the time. So then I push for a verbal, but I'll ask them, I'll say, hey, if you think we have a shot, do you recommend we do a verbal right now and then put it in writing? Or do you think it'd be better to put it in writing right now and present it to him? What would you recommend? And let him tell you what he's willing to do. And you might be like, well, why don't I just give him a call right now and tell him, and then we can go from there? Or he might be like, you know what? I got no problem writing it up. Let's write it up. And like, okay, sweet. Let's write it up.
Yeah, as soon as we hang up here, I'll text it to you.
Okay, and then I'll just submit an offer.
Yeah, all I need is terms. So basically, offer price, how many days for inspection, how many days for financing, if it's financed or closed.
You have our offer sheet, right, Jeremy?
Yes.
So then what you say to him is you say, look, I've got an offer sheet and it's got all the information you need to write the offer. So there's like 10 things on there. It'll have company name, your address, price, closing date, inspection, earnest money, all the things. Rather than have him explain all that, I just say, yeah, no problem. I've got an offer sheet I'll send you and it'll have everything you need to fill out the contract. I'll often ask the agent what they recommend with the terms. So I'll say to them, hey, what do you think I need to do for earnest money? What do you think I need to do for inspection? I'd like 10 days. Is that an issue? If they come back and they're like, yeah, earnest money, $500. You're like, phew, I'm glad I didn't say I would give them 1,000. You want that agent to coach you as best they can on what's important to the seller. So I'll talk about all the terms. I'll say, hey, is 30 days fine? Is that an issue? They might say, yeah, 30 days is totally fine. Or they might be like, you know what? We got a much better chance if you can do it faster. And doesn't mean you have to, or you will, or you want to. It just means you're having that agent help you understand more about what's important to the seller. And that's to your advantage because now you can use that information as leverage. So for example, I'll come back and I'll say, man, I can do a bigger earnest money. I can make it non-refundable and I can close sooner. But if that's really important to the seller, I can do that. But I'm going to need a better discount. I'm going to need a little better on the price because I'm taking on a little more risk here, you know, because I'm waiving things and I'm closing sooner and I got to get the cash available quicker. So I'm willing to do that, but can we bring the price down to 115 and then I'll do these other things. So you're using that to help you negotiate a deal. So I always use the terms of the contract, not creative finance terms, but terms of the contract as leverage in my negotiations. Let's say that you do the standard stuff, 30 days, 10-day inspection, and $1,000 earnest money. And then they come back and they counter you at 139 and you wanted to be at 125. Now is when I'll leverage those terms and I'll say, man, I can't really come up on price, but what I could do is I could do this, this, and this. I could do bigger earnest money, waive inspection, this. You don't have to do that, but I'm just helping you see that those are tools to negotiate with.
Right.
For cash, you know, how many days for closing, how many days for inspection if you're going to do one.
Sure.
So on and so forth. So just need that, and then your email address and the name of if it's purchasing in your name or if it's in an ND.
It sounds like he's willing to write it.
Okay, yeah, so I'll send that out to you. Send me that email and email address. I'll send you it out right now, and then I'll just follow up with you.
All right, perfect.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so Jeremy forgot to do the, hey, do you have anything else I can look at? Call me when you get stuff. Call me before you list it. You want to say that every single time. No matter how many times you talk to an agent, you always say that.
More information on this one. So I did send him that offer sheet at the 126. This is that bank-owned property I was telling you about.
Mm-hmm.
So I put the offer sheet at the 126 and they countered at the 139 with 5 days And then I countered back at 129 with the 5 days, and they accepted it and sent me the contract to sign. And then I got nervous. And so I reached out to Jen Salcedo, somebody down in Fort Worth, had her run some comps with me for me. And she came up and just said, you probably shouldn't offer more than 115 for it.
You backed out during your inspection?
I didn't even sign the contract.
Which that's normal. So feeling like that is okay. Like normalize that. There's always uncertainty in the beginning when you're not totally sure if you have a deal. And that's why we have an inspection clause. So we want to be careful with that. At some point, you got to decide, am I willing to see if I can get this done? And again, earlier I explained about how we back out of deals and how that's a bad thing. It's only a bad thing if you're intentionally doing it and you know it's not a deal, or you don't even take the time to see if it's a deal. One way that I explain this is if I think it's tight, I'd say this to the agent. I'd say, look, 129, that might work, but I'm worried it's a little too tight. The only way I'm going to know is during my due diligence. And I can't do due diligence until we have a contract in place. So I'm in a bit of a conundrum here. Like, I want the deal. I think 129 will work, but I won't know until I dig into it. And when I dig into it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to really get my head around the neighborhood, the values. I'm going to really get my head around the repairs, what needs done there. I'm going to need to get access to the property. I'm going to need to get over there with my investors and my partners and my contractors, AKA cash buyers, right? I'm going to need to really dig into this. So agent, I'm letting you know that there might be a possibility that during due diligence, I find out 129 doesn't work. And I want to be transparent with you about this because I don't want to say yes to 129. And then in a couple of days, I call you up and tell you that it doesn't work and you're pissed off at me. If you're going to be pissed off at me, let's not sign at 129 because I don't know for sure. And if you're okay with me doing my very best to make sure 129 works, then let's go down that road. I'm willing to invest the time to do the due diligence. And so what I just did there was I just prepped them. And then when I come back and I'm like, hey, 129 doesn't work. You can't just say it doesn't work. You got to have a good reason. Let's say I send 20 cash buyers over there and they're all telling you that 135 is their number. And now you know. And I would ask every cash buyer, well, why 135? What's your rehab number? What do you think the values are? Now I gathered all that feedback. And then when I go back to the agent on day 4, of my due diligence, I say to the agent, look, 129 doesn't work. And here's why. The repairs are this. I thought they were this. The back end value on this after I've really got into it is 275. I thought it was 300, or whatever. And so now you're armed with information that you got from your cash buyer feedback. And now you go back to that agent with a logical reason why 129 doesn't work. You've already prepped them that it might not work. And now you're having a conversation about a renegotiation and nobody's mad about it.
Right. That's genius, Jerry.
Where everybody gets mad is if you're like, I'm for sure, I'm going to buy it. Yes, 129. And you give the agent all this certainty and then you back out and you look like an idiot. And now he's pissed off.
So your initial offer is going to kind of like a soft offer. It's not hard, I guess.
I mean, it's hard in the fact that you sign a contract, but it's soft in that you've got contingency, you've got due diligence. Right. I'm just saying what you're doing is you're setting proper expectations with the agent. I've never had an agent be mad at me when I set proper expectations. I've been able to back out of deals with agents because I set proper expectations and save the relationship. Nobody's mad at me only because I set proper expectations about due diligence upfront before signing. And I'll literally say it just like I did. I'll say, look, if I lock this up at 129 right now and I get into my due diligence and I find out that the rehab's bigger than I thought and the values are lower than I think, and I got to come back to you and blow this up, I don't want you upset with me about that. I'm willing to go down that road if you're willing to go down that road with me. Are we in this together? And I'll say it like that. And if they're like, no, if you back out of this, everyone's going to be upset. The bank's going to be mad. I'm going to be mad. I'd rather you go do your due diligence now before we lock it up. I don't want to sign a contract if you're not certain you can do it. But that's why we have due diligence. The reason why we have due diligence is so that we can make sure it pencils. Let's say the agent says to you, I don't want to do that. Go sharpen your pencil now. Do your due diligence now. I'll say to that agent, I'll say, look, this probably isn't going to work out then. Because when I do due diligence, I invest in that. Like I'm going to spend time on that. I'm going to be meeting partners, investors, contractors. Like I'm going to have hours into the due diligence process. And I can't do that kind of due diligence on a property I don't have a contract on. You would agree that would be a waste of time, wouldn't it? Because what if I do all that due diligence and they say no to my offer, or you sell it to somebody else while I'm doing due diligence? That wouldn't be very smart, would it? And it wouldn't be. Like, that'd be the worst thing you could do, would be due diligence on a property you don't have a contract on. Like, don't ever do that. See how we're explaining this to the agent, and then go under contract, do your due diligence. When I know I'm wholesaling, my due diligence looks like this. I'm going to do my very best to get to value. I'm going to do my very best to get to rehab number. And then I'm going to take my deal to the market and I'm going to dispo. And I'm going to dispo it as hard as I can, meaning I'm going to contact every cash buyer I possibly can. I'm going to get feedback. I'm going to know at the end of that exercise, at the end of my dispo work, I'm going to know what the market's willing to do for that property, because I'll have talked to enough buyers that will tell me. And now I can go back to the agent and I'm armed with information. Let's say that, Jeremy, you did that and you've got a cash buyer that says, I'll pay you 140 and you have it at 129. I would say to that cash buyer, I would say, are you willing to go hard? You know, are you willing to put down non-refundable earnest money? And then you commit that cash buyer during your due diligence. Then you go back to your agent and you say, hey, I'm done with due diligence. Everything's cleared. Now I'm letting my earnest money go hard. Why? Because you have your buyer committed. Your window of time is your due diligence period, which is why I really like 10 days, because it gives me lots of time to find my buyer. What I just explained, that doesn't work if you go hard on earnest money because you have no due diligence now.
Right.
So you would never do that. The problem that we have oftentimes with on market is we're trying to squeak out a 5K, a 10K, a 3K, a 7K. So you're writing such a fine margin between deal or no deal. It's really risky if you're going to find a buyer. It's like, don't ride the fine line of deal, no deal. Make sure you're deep. And if you're going to play the fine line, get an inspection contingency, set proper expectations with the agent, and know that you're very marginal and you're probably going to spend a lot of time doing a lot of work, and maybe not you get a buyer. I don't like that model. I would rather you say, look, there's no way I can pay 129. Like, I'd probably go back and be like, man, I think 125 is a deal, but to make sure, I better be at 115. I want to go into deals trying to make 20, 25, not try to make 5, because then I know I'm deep enough. It means you're going to pass on stuff, but it means when you get one, it's going to be a winner. Own the decision you're making. If you're going to play the margin to try to make 5 or 10, that's fine. You could do a lot of deals that way, but you better have a really dialed in process on renegotiations. Renegotiations is going to be the name of the game with that type of model, because you're so close to a deal or no deal that there's a high likelihood that you're going to have to renegotiate those contracts. And that's not going to go well with agents where you're trying to create a relationship. If you're doing that a lot, they're going to get sort of tired of that. You're not going to do 5 deals with an agent where every deal you're renegotiating. They're going to stop trusting your number. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Leave a comment and tell me if you like this, like if you're finding this really helpful.
Hey Fernando, this is Jeremy Raey. How are you doing today?
Hey Jeremy, how you doing?
Good. I'm just following up on a property that I put an offer on a while back on Wellesley Avenue.
Wesley, wow, yes, Wesley. Okay. When did you send your offer, sir?
I said a while back. I mean, it was pretty low compared to what's listed at, and I didn't know if they're motivated or they're still kind of holding that number.
Okay, yeah, if we get offered, we send them over to we're the listing group, but there's Francisco Almeida. He's the one that's more in contact with the sellers. So, either they rejected it or just didn't respond because it was too low. I don't know, how much was your offer for?
It was 113.
Okay, yeah, I think we've gotten somebody even 130, and so I think we just got permission from him if he's below a certain amount to.
Okay, one thing that I noticed here, I don't really know what the initial call went like, but I think you need to do a little bit more investigative work on the situation. So one of the main things I try to find out is, hey, can you tell me what's going on here? What's the situation here with the seller, or what's going on with this property? You want to try to get some sort of visibility in who the seller is. So you would say something like, hey, tell me what's going on here. And it might be like, yeah, this is an investor. They've got 50 properties. We sell 5 a year for them. It's a rental that is vacant right now, and they're just looking to sell it. And these guys don't come down on price. They'll sit here forever until they get their number. They might say that, right?
So are you saying, just to recap what was already said, if it's a follow-up call?
I would keep track of this stuff in a CRM, like in Flipster, and have notes. And then when you do your follow-ups, you pull that up and you're looking at your bullet point of your first conversation. And then I would use that. I would say, hey, when we spoke a couple of weeks ago, you had mentioned that the seller's trying to move to Texas. It's grandma and she's moving in with the son-in-law. Is the seller still looking to get something done? Like, help me understand, has anything changed since we spoke last? You know what's going on now. You're aware of the situation, and then you're trying to use that to help you in some way. It sounds to me like he's not directly in contact with the seller, is what he said. Somebody else is. Who is that other person? Are you a co-agent? Maybe they tell you something that you could do that would be valuable. So, for example, they might say, well, they need the proceeds from this house to move into their next one. Okay, would it be helpful if we offered post-occupancy? Would that be helpful to the seller? We'll let them stay there for 30 days after closing. You would do that? Yeah, we could do that. Wow, that would really help their situation. That changes the game now, because they've been really worried about having to move out once they sell. Or, I just made that up, but like, there's information there that you could use to help you craft a good offer. Post-occupancy means you let the seller stay there for a little bit after closing. You could hold money in escrow, and then when they leave, you release the rest of it. Now, why is that valuable? Because now they get proceeds, and they now have the proceeds to pay for moving, pay for packing, pay for the down payment on a rental, or whatever they're going to do. I offer post-occupancy all the time. It's a huge value add to sellers to give them post-occupancy. And a lot of cash buyers understand this too. Let's go back to your call.
So I think we just got permission from him, if he's below a certain amount, to either reject him or not even, he's not even interested. Yeah. So if what's your name again?
Jeremy Raey.
Let me send. Let me see. Let me make sure I find it here. Okay. Give me a second, Jeremy. I'm trying to pull your offer here online, because then I can forward it to Frankie, just to see what happened on the response. But
yeah, so this guy has no clue what's going on. He's got no connection to the seller. He's basically reaching out to the agent that does and is asking. So I would probably be asking Jeremy, are you a buyer's agent in this transaction, or are you the listing agent? Like, who the heck are you right now? Who am I talking to? Because that happens often, and you're talking to the wrong person. You're going to go nowhere because he's bringing no value to you. He doesn't know anything.
It might have just been a verbal one that I'd provided.
Might have been, man, because I can't find you.
Yeah, so Jeremy, you want to start tracking all these conversations you're having.
Better notes for sure.
Yep, take good notes, because your job with agents is to exude confidence and like you got your crap together, right? Like, you don't remember me because you're an idiot, but I remember you because I am an investor. We spoke 3 weeks ago. I made a verbal offer for 80. I'm following up to see if there's any movement here, if the seller's willing to look at another offer from me. Tell me what's going on. I made an offer for 80,000 3 weeks ago, and it's still here for sale. It looks like you guys did a price drop. Are you getting some action? So you're not coming across like you're all together. He's clearly not all together, and you're not being efficient with your time.
Right. Yeah. 100% agree.
Oh. Okay. Did you text it, or?
Yeah, I might have texted or just talked to somebody.
Okay. So 9655 is your number. Let me see here. 9655 is the last one. Yeah. Well, I got your number and name, so let me forward it to Francisco.
So I'd say, now tell me, who's Francisco? Right? Like, ask who that is. Who are you in this transaction, and who's Francisco in this transaction? Help me understand. Right? Like, that's what you want to find out right now, because who knows?
So let me forward it to Francisco.
Okay.
And let them know that, you have an offer for, you said 139.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, there it is. I see it here. Yeah. Okay. Let me forward it to him, and then we'll keep you posted.
Yeah. Is there any? I mean, do they have a mortgage on it?
You know what, man? That'll probably be a good question for Francisco. Like I said, he's the primary point of contact on this one, because he's talking to the sellers.
Okay.
But I'll let him know if you have questions, or maybe he can reach out.
Oh yeah, that'd be perfect. Do you guys have any other fix and flip properties about ready to come to market?
No, not. Well, let me think. I have one in Weatherford, but if you're paying 113 for prices, man, I don't know that.
Is it?
Yeah, I mean,
is it fixer upper? Is it fixer upper in Weatherford?
It's it needs to be completed. So the kitchen and the bathrooms, everything else is, new flooring, new everything. But the guy, he's like, okay, let me see if I can send it this way as is, because he's out of funds. Or, he finishes, maybe somebody's willing to pay, I guess ARV, that he can just fix it up and sell it. I'll text you the address also.
Yeah, text me the address. I'm really interested. I have a lot of properties in mineral wells.
Well, this one is in Weatherford.
Yeah, so Weatherford's close to mineral wells. So I'd be definitely interested in the Weatherford property.
Okay, so Jeremy, let me give you a quick tip on this. So he's doing some math in his head, and he's saying, well, if you're at 113 on this one, there's no way you're going to be a deal on this one, which is a legit argument to make in your mind, right? So how do you overcome that? So the way you want to overcome that is, again, expectation. So I would say something like, you know what? I'd like to take a look at it anyway. I'll give you my number. It might be a low number. If it is, don't take it the wrong way. I look at everything objectively. I come to my number. I'll give you that number. If it works, great. Let's do a deal. If it doesn't work, no problem. Are you okay with that? And I ask them if they're okay with it, because what I want to say to them is I want to say, hey, let's normalize my low offers. Like, it's not a big deal. It's no big deal. If it works, awesome. Let's get a deal done. If it doesn't work, I get it. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make it so that they're not feeling like it's a waste of time to call me about deals. As soon as an agent thinks that Jeremy buys too low, I'm not going to call him about this one, because the last one we did, we were way off. Because he was low on that one, he'll be low on this one. I mean, I see where they're coming from, but it's not a common deduction to make, because it's a different property altogether, So you want to say things like, listen, any and all properties you get that are distressed, send those to me. I'll run my numbers. I'll give you an offer. You could do a verbal with the seller. I'll make it really easy for you. You don't ever want an agent feeling like, I don't really want to call Jeremy because he buys too low.
Yeah.
Right. You want to make sure you're overcoming that all the time and reassuring them, right? Like, hey, it's no big deal. If I'm off and it doesn't work, no problem. But I'm still willing to give you offers on anything you've got. Okay, good. Let's see where that went.
He just needs to finish out. He's got a little apartment in the back that, it could actually be like another second living quarters, because it's got plumbing and electrical.
Okay.
But he didn't do nothing to that. He just kind of cleaned it up. And then you have the main house, which is a 3-2.
Okay.
But again, the bathroom, you'll see the pictures. I'll send you the link here in a minute.
Okay. Yeah. Is it on market right now?
I think we have it. It's coming. Then give me a second. Okay, it should be active in the next 2-3 hours. I'm talking here to our assistant. That's helping us.
Oh, I'd love to get an offer on that before it goes live.
Yes. Good, Jeremy. Good. I would even go a step further and say, hey, do you mind pausing that just till I get you my number? Because, man, if you can ever get a deal not listed, like off market, that's huge, because it's easy to dispo off market. It's way easier to dispo off market than it is to dispo on market. Okay. Buyers like to see properties that no one's seen before that aren't active on the market. I feel like probably 50% of cash buyers in the marketplace will say no to an on market property. It's the stupidest thing, because who cares if it's listed? Does the number work? It shouldn't matter, but it does for a lot of buyers. If you can keep that thing off market, it'll make your dispo way better. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you're on it because you recognized I don't want to have to compete with everybody, which is so true.
I'd love to get an offer on that before it goes live. That'd be nice if I can get that offer there. Yeah, send it to me.
We're not going to take 113, but I'll take a look.
Oh, I know. That was just for that specific property. I can look at. I'll run my numbers on this one. Just send me the address.
Here, it's going to be like 250. There's one that sold there just recently for that. But again, he's asking 235. He finishes, if it's just as is, 190.
Okay. How much do you think it's going to cost to get that fixed up?
I just kitchen, man. So, I told him when we get a contract, I'll fund the renovation. I know, because he's out of money. So I'll fund it, and we can probably get 235. But, yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking maybe, I'm not going to 20 on the top end, but, maybe 15.
What happened, Jeremy?
I don't know. It just cut off for some reason.
Did he just say he'll fund it?
Well, then I really screwed up on that call. If you did.
Let's listen to that end part.
I told him when we get a contract, I'll fund the renovation. I know, because he's out of money.
I'll fund the renovation. You got to call this guy back and work that relationship with that guy.
Right. I was thinking about my next call. That's what I was doing, probably.
That's the challenge. You know, the worst thing you can do, and this is very common, so try to watch yourself, is you're so nervous and you're trying to like follow a script or whatever, and you're thinking about your next question and not actively listening to what they say. And you've got to somehow, you know, Anne-Marie would say, calm your nervous system down. Don't think about the next thing and just try to listen. And then what I try to do is I try to just dumb it all down. I try to dumb the whole thing down. I try to pretend like I'm an idiot, and whatever the agent says, I got to know what that means. I got to understand what they're saying. And so they'll say something and I'll be like, well, wait, what? What did you just say? Did you just say you would fund the rehab? Tell me about that. Or do you do private lending, or what is it that you do? Or why would you fund the rehab? And he might be like, yeah, well, I've got cash aside, or I do some private money lending on the side, or I'm a partner with the seller on the deal, or it's my brother, I'm helping out. And so I'm trying to get the, you know what I mean? Who knows, right? But anytime somebody says funding, I'll fund the deal or I'll whatever, I'm like, PML, man, let's go.
Right.
Yeah.
Hello?
Hello, is this Heyman?
Yes.
Hey, this is Jeremy Raey. You have a listing at Evans Avenue still? Is that still available?
Yeah.
What's the situation with it?
So awesome question, Jeremy. That's almost how I start every single question. One thing I'd add to that would be, I'm an investor. I'm looking at this as a possible flip or maybe even a rental. Can you tell me what's going on? Can you tell me about the property, or what's the situation here? Now, the reason why is because I want to give some context to that agent so that they know who they're talking to. They're going to talk differently if they think I'm retail versus if they think I'm investor.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so you want to like give them a little bit of context as to who you are in the conversation. So I love like, hey, this is Jeremy Raey. I'm calling about XYZ property. Is that still available? Yes. Cool. I'm an investor. I'm looking at this as possibly a flip, maybe keep it as a rental. And I like to say both, unless I know for sure. Like if I know it's not a rental because it's like in an ARV area and, you know, needs a big rehab, then I'll just say flip. But if it's like a lower income price point where it could go either way, I want to come across as either one. If this is anything like the market where you've been doing your other deals, it's probably more rental than it is flip.
Mm-hmm.
So guys, everybody listening here, it's all about the price point. So if you're in a lower price point, then it could go either way. And you're going to look at it much differently. And your buyers are going to be much different, whether it's a flipper or a buy and hold. If you're anything under 200,000 in value, then you need to be wearing both hats. You need to be looking at it objectively from a flipper or from a buy and hold. And if it's under 100,000, then it's probably 90% buy and hold. Because flippers don't flip $100,000 houses. Those are mostly going to landlords. Under 200 is going to be high probability that those buy and hold investors are looking at those deals too.
Are you talking about the ARV?
If you're in that ballpark, if you're in that region of 200, could be 175, could be 250, but anything down there, those cash flow. If a property cash flows, then buy and hold people are going to be looking at those too. Like, let's say you're looking at a $500,000, $600,000 neighborhood. That's going to be 80% flippers and 20% buy and hold. If you're looking at a $200,000 price point, that's going to be 80% buy and hold, 20% flipper. So now you're looking at it and you're going, okay, what do buy and hold people pay for properties in this neighborhood? And I'm looking at this and going, if I were to flip this, or if a flipper were to flip this, they're going to spend 30 grand because they're going to need to do kitchen and granite and everything. A landlord's going to throw $3,000 at this and pop a tenant in there. They're going to paint it and throw a tenant in there. They're not going to do anything. So now my numbers are much different. Jeremy, you have to understand both. You have to understand what flippers are paying in your neighborhood, because you're going to have some of that, and you really have to understand what the buy and hold guys pay in your neighborhood. Because if you're only looking at it from a flipper's perspective, you're going to be way off on all your deals because you're going to be having to buy too low, and the market's paying way more because those guys are keeping them, not flipping them. You're going to need to really get your head around the rental market there.
Yeah.
Which is probably why that one deal was 125 and you're at 80, because 80 is where you have to be for a flipper, but you could probably pay 115 and wholesale it to a buy and hold for 125. You got to get your head around that, and you got to ask lots of questions on both sides. You got to understand when you're talking to these agents, where are the numbers coming in at? Are those flippers or buy and hold guys? And then when you go to dispo, you're talking to all your buyers. Like you're helping every cash buyer. You're like, tell me your number. How do you calculate a good buy and hold? What do you look at to determine that? What's your formula? Wholesaling, if we really strip it down, is what are buyers paying in my market less my wholesale fee? That's your formula. It's that simple. What are they paying? Back out my number. That's my offer. Now we generalize where we go 70% rule and this and that, but those are just standards to start with. Every market's different. In Phoenix, they pay 82 cents on the dollar. In Detroit, they pay 50 cents on the dollar.
Right.
Because Phoenix is a hot market, Detroit's a low income market, right? So there is no rule. The rule is every market's going to have its own thing, and you got to figure that out. Back out your wholesale fee. There's your price. Let's go back to your call.
A lot of work, interior work, but foundation is good. I mean, roof is good. Other than that, it needs a lot of work.
Okay.
And located in a very good neighborhood. I mean, the left side of that road in Evans is all commercial, and the city is okay with somebody's turning it into commercial and making it like an office or something.
Okay.
So how much?
So that would mean, Jeremy, it's zoned commercial and residential. And those are tricky, right? Because who wants to live in a commercial district? Now, rental may not matter because who cares? It's a rental. People will rent. Again, this goes back to like, who's my end buyer? What's my exit?
So how much work do you think it needs, if you had to guess?
To make it a very nice, livable house, that the owner herself hired a company and they gave her estimate of 50,000. I think 49 something. To making it ready.
So how much work do you think it needs? Great question. He obviously knows what's going on because he said it needs this, it doesn't need that. So great question. Whenever they say that, Jeremy, I always ask if I could get a copy of that.
Good idea.
They got a bid from a contractor for 50,000. If you had that in your grubby little fingers and you could pass that on to a buyer, that's a big value add.
And if I was to fix it up to that, put $50,000 into it, what do you think it would sell for?
I did a CMA when I first listed it. It was at least 250, but now I think it went down to like 240 after repair value.
Okay, so about 240, but about $50,000 into it.
So Jeremy, at the 70% formula, 240 times 70 minus 49 or 50 in rehab is 118. Again, that's like the standardized rules, the 70% formula. That's safe. That's good. It doesn't mean that's exactly what the market's paying. And it also means at 240, you're on the fringe between a flipper could want this or a buy and hold could want this. You could go either way at that price point.
Yeah.
Is she motivated to sell quickly?
Yeah, send me an offer. I mean, she's motivated.
Okay. I'm looking at my numbers. I mean, I'm gonna have to be a little bit lower than what the asking is.
Okay.
Looks like about 120.
Write it, and I'm going to present it. I'm going to try to convince her because, like you said, it's been in the market for a while.
Yeah.
Jeremy, that's like the response you want right there.
Yep.
That's great.
Yeah, let me do that. Let me get it in writing, and I'll just text it to you. Can I just text it to my offer to you to this phone number?
Yes, and do you have agent, or you want me to write the contract?
Yeah, I'd like you to. I'll let you write it, so you can both sides of the commission. That'd be perfect.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Thank you.
I will send it to you right now, and then I'll follow up with you.
All right. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Oh, we saved the best one for last, Jeremy.
Yep, we did. Thank you.
That was great. So let me show you something real quick here, how I do this, Jeremy. I have in my notes an offer sheet, agent offer sheet. I text this to the agent. So number one, buyer name, address, price, 20,000, funding, cash, proof of funds to be included, condition title free and clear because it's agent, so they know that. Inspection contingency, 10 days from accepted offer, earnest money deposit, $1,000, closing date, 30 days from accepted offer, access to property, seller to give buyer unrestricted access via lockbox, and closing company, seller to close with buyer's title of choice, and then any other terms. But this right here, I text this to agents. and it's saved in my notes. That's my template. I might change something and put, obviously you'll change the price and you might change the earnest money or whatever, but like this is a evergreen offer sheet that you just text right to agents. I don't even email it. I text it. I highly, highly recommend everybody record your calls like Jeremy did. And if anything, watch your calls again. One thing, Jeremy, I would say is I would try to up the energy level. Whatever energy level feels normal to you, jack it up like 25%, and then it'll come across normal. From the other side's perspective, energy is a lot lower than we perceive it. Always amp it up a bit, like be a little bit more over the top with your energy, and it'll actually come across normal. Other than that, though, Jeremy, like you're right on. You're doing the right things. I mean, there's fundamental questions you ask, and mostly it's just nuance to improve and consistency and just getting the reps in.